Of all the inns in all the mountains, Amy had to walk into the one where her fated mate, a silver-haired stranger she'd never met, was arguing over the last available room. The mountain road had been passable when she'd started her journey at dawn, the sky clear and deceptively peaceful. Now, 8 hours later, the heavens churned with dark clouds that promised a storm capable of burying anyone foolish enough to remain exposed. The wind carried the sharp bite of ice, and the temperature had dropped so fast that Amy's breath formed visible clouds with every exhale. The kind of storm that didn't just trap travelers, it killed them. The frozen haven appeared through the swirling snow like a miracle carved from ancient stone, its windows glowing with warm amber firelight against the encroaching darkness. It was the only shelter for 40 miles, a fortress-like structure that looked as though it had been hewn directly from the mountainside itself. Amy pushed through the heavy wooden door, her healer's satchel weighing heavily on her exhausted shoulders, and nearly collided with a wall of black leather and fur. The wall was a man, standing with his back to her, arguing with the innkeeper in a voice that made her think of distant thunder, low, commanding, barely restrained. Silver hair cascaded past his collar like liquid moonlight, and even through his travel-worn armor adorned with intricate metalwork, she could see the breadth of his shoulders, the lethal grace in the way he held himself perfectly still while radiating coiled power. "I've traveled 3 days for this room," he was saying, his tone brooking no argument. "And the lady's been waiting longer, sir, and I gave her my word," the innkeeper countered, a weathered woman with sharp eyes and no-nonsense steel in her voice. She crossed her arms. "I keep my promises, unlike some travelers who think coin solves everything." That's when he turned. Amy's breath stopped. He had the kind of face that made you forget every warning your mother ever gave you. Sharp, aristocratic cheekbones that could cut glass. A strong jaw covered with the shadow of several days' travel. A mouth that looked like it knew exactly how to command armies, or destroy a woman's defenses with a single word. But it was his eyes that trapped her, molten amber, like liquid gold touched by firelight, holding ancient power and intelligence far beyond what any ordinary soldier should possess. The kind of man who left kingdoms changed in his wake. But when those amber eyes locked onto hers, something shifted. His pupils dilated. His entire body went predator still in a way that reminded her of a wolf catching a scent on the wind, every muscle coiled and alert. That's when she felt it. A pull low in her belly, sharp and insistent, like a golden thread snapping taut between them. Something inside her recognized him before her mind could catch up, before logic could intervene. The mate bond her grandmother had whispered about in childhood stories, the connection that couldn't be denied, couldn't be reasoned away.
No, not now.
Not him. His hands curled into fists at his sides, leather gloves creaking. His jaw tightened. He felt it too. The mate bond igniting between them like wildfire catching dry tinder. "When you feel it, child, don't ignore it," her grandmother had warned in whispered stories by the fire, her weathered hands gentle on Amy's hair. But don't trust it blindly either. Fate has a wicked sense of humor, and destiny doesn't always arrive wrapped in safety. "There's one room left," the innkeeper was saying, oblivious to the way the air between them had turned electric, charged with something Amy didn't know how to name. "Just the one. Storm's going to hit full force in less than an hour, and anyone caught outside won't see morning." She looked between them with shrewd, assessing eyes. "So, unless you two want to flip a coin for it, I'd suggest you figure something out fast." The stranger's amber gaze hadn't left Amy's face. When he spoke, his voice was rougher than before, edged with something that might have been wonder or dread. "We'll share it." "I don't think," Amy started. "You'd rather freeze to death than spend a night in the same room as me?" One silver eyebrow arched, a challenge, and a dare wrapped in dark velvet. "We're adults. I'm sure we can manage to be civil for one night." Civil, right. As if civility had anything to do with the way her body was responding to his proximity, the way every healer's instinct she possessed was reaching toward him, urging her closer. As if she couldn't feel the mate bond humming between them like a living thing, golden and insistent. The innkeeper's expression turned knowing, almost amused. Fair warning, there's only one bed. Won't be a problem, the stranger said, though his voice held a note that suggested it would be anything but simple. Before we continue, take 2 seconds to hit that subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. I want to know if you believe in fate bringing two strangers together, or if you think Amy should run while she still can. Any other night, Amy would have braved the storm, taken her chances with the cold and the wolves and whatever else lurked in the mountains. She'd survived worse in the 3 weeks since the massacre. But her mentor's voice echoed in her mind, Elder Miriam's final words as the village burned. A dead girl can't warn the others, Amy. You stay alive. You survive. That's how you honor the fallen. She was the only one left who knew what really happened. The only one who had seen the scarred man's face through the cellar grate, who had heard him ordering his soldiers to find the amplifier. If she died in this storm, the truth died with her, and her village's slaughter would go unanswered. The other healers being hunted across the kingdom would have no warning, no chance to protect themselves. So she'd share a room with this silver-haired stranger, this man who made her skin warm and her healer's gift hum with unprecedented energy. She'd keep her distance, guard her secrets, survive the night, and be gone by morning. Simple. Straightforward. Survivable. Fine, she heard herself say, her voice steadier than she felt. We'll share. Something flashed in his amber eyes. Not triumph exactly, but a heat that made her stomach flip. A promise that this night would be anything but simple. The room was smaller than Amy had expected. A single bed dominated the cramped space, barely large enough for one person let alone two, covered with a faded quilt that had seen better seasons. A stone fireplace took up most of one wall, cold and dark. A washstand with a chipped basin. One narrow window where wind rattled the shutters with increasing violence. Seth closed the door behind them with a soft click that felt too loud in the silence. He surveyed the room with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to less-than-ideal accommodations, then moved his pack to the corner. I'll take the floor. The floor's stone, Amy pointed out, setting down her healer's satchel with more force than necessary. You'll freeze. I've slept in worse conditions. His amber eyes met hers, unreadable. I'm not about to make you uncomfortable in your own bed. It's not my bed. It's the inn's bed. And we're both adults who can share a sleeping space without. She stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. Without touching? Without acknowledging the pull between them? Without making this complicated? Without making it awkward? Seth finished, a hint of amusement in his voice. He moved to the fireplace, kneeling to arrange kindling. Though I think we're already past that point. Amy watched his hands work, efficient and sure, coaxing flame from flint and tinder. What brings a soldier this far into the mountains? She asked, needing something to fill the charged silence. Tracking raiders. He didn't look up from the growing fire. There have been attacks on villages in the northern territories. I'm investigating. Alone. I work better that way. The fire caught, casting flickering shadows across his sharp features. And you? What's a healer doing traveling by herself with winter coming? Heading south. To the sanctuaries. It wasn't entirely a lie. There's nothing left for me in the north. Something in her tone made him pause. When he looked at her, his gaze was gentler than she'd expected. I'm sorry. They lapsed into silence as the fire grew, warmth slowly seeping into the cold room. Outside, the storm hit with full force, wind howling like a living thing against the stones. Seth pulled dried meat and bread from his pack, offering half to Amy without ceremony. She hesitated, then accepted, realizing she hadn't eaten since dawn. They sat by the fire, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough that every accidental brush of shoulder sent sparks racing across her skin. The raiders, Seth said quietly, breaking bread between his hands. They've been targeting specific villages, burning them completely. No survivors. He glanced at her. At least, that's what we thought until recently. Amy's throat tightened. Why would they do that? That's what I'm trying to figure out. His jaw clenched. I lost people to raiders when I was young. My parents. I couldn't save them then, but maybe I can stop it from happening to others now. The raw honesty in his voice undid something in her chest. I'm running from something, she heard herself admit. From people who want to use me for what I can do. Seth turned to face her fully, and she expected questions, demands for details. Instead, he simply nodded. Then run as far as you need to. No one has the right to take your choices from you. The understanding in his eyes, the lack of pressure, made her feel safer than she had in 3 weeks of hiding and running. As the storm raged outside, battering the inn with wind and snow, Amy felt an unfamiliar sense of shelter that had nothing to do with stone walls. Exhaustion pulled at her eventually, and she couldn't fight it anymore. Seth insisted she take the bed while he settled in the chair by the fire, angled so he could see both the door and the window. Old habits, he explained when she protested. I don't sleep well anyway. Amy lay down fully clothed, her small knife tucked under the pillow, another old habit, and let her eyes close. The nightmare came swiftly.
Fire.
Screaming. The acrid smell of burning thatch choking her lungs. She was 12 years old again, hiding in the root cellar while her mentor, Elder Miriam, pressed a weathered hand over her mouth to keep her silent. Above them, boots thundered across the wooden floor. Deep voices shouted orders. Through the cellar's narrow air grate, Amy could see flames consuming everything she'd ever known. Check every building, a cultured male voice commanded, cold as winter frost. Find the amplifier, the one who can boost others. She's here somewhere. A man passed by the grate, scarred face, cruel eyes, a distinctive mark across his left eyebrow. He paused, and Amy's heart nearly stopped, certain he could hear its frantic beating. Sir, should we spare the healers? We could use them. No witnesses. The scarred man cut him off. Burn it all. More screams. A child crying for their mother. Then terrible silence. Elder Miriam's grip trembled against Amy's face, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Run, Amy, she whispered, barely audible. Your gift is too valuable. Don't let them use you. Don't let them find. The cellar door crashed open above them. Amy woke with a gasp that tore from her throat like a scream, sitting bolt upright, unable to breathe past the memories choking her. Seth was there instantly, kneeling beside the bed.
Hey.
You're safe. You're here with me. You're safe. His voice was steady, grounding, an anchor in the chaos. Her chest heaved, panic clawing at her ribs. She couldn't get air, couldn't think past the flames and screaming. Breathe with me, Seth said quietly. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4.
Can you do that?
She focused on his voice, the calm amber of his eyes. Slowly, agonizingly, her breathing evened out. The panic receded, leaving her shaking and hollow. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to. Don't. His hand hovered near hers, not quite touching. May I? She nodded, and his fingers wrapped around hers, warm and solid and real. The contact sent that familiar golden spark through her, but underneath was simple comfort. Human connection. My village, Amy said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. 3 weeks ago, raiders attacked. They killed everyone. My mentor, the other healers, everyone. I'm the only one left. Seth's hand tightened on hers. I'm sorry. God, Amy, I'm so sorry. I hid like a coward while they died. You survived. That's not cowardice. That's strength. His thumb moved across her knuckles, soothing. When I was 12, raiders killed my parents. For years I had nightmares about not being able to save them. I still have them sometimes. The shared pain between them felt like its own kind of bond, separate from the mate pull, but just as powerful. Without thinking, Amy channeled her healing energy, trying to calm the erratic beating of her own heart. But the moment her power activated, something extraordinary happened. Seth's alpha presence surged like a tidal wave, filling the room with crackling energy. The air itself seemed to vibrate. Golden light pulsed from where their hands joined, bright enough to cast shadows on the walls. They both jerked back, startled. What was that? Seth's voice was rough with shock. Amy stared at her hands, trembling. I don't know. I was just trying to. I'm a healer. But that's never happened before. Seth looked at his own hands, then at her, and something clicked behind his eyes. Wonder. Understanding. Maybe fear. Your gift. It doesn't just heal, does it? Before she could answer, before she could think about the implications, the mate bond pulled taut between them again. Seth moved closer, and Amy met him halfway. I felt it the moment I saw you, he admitted quietly. The bond. I've never felt anything like it. I felt it too. Amy's confession came out barely above a whisper. But everyone I've cared about has died. I can't. I don't know if I can survive losing someone else. Seth's hand came up to cup her face, gentle despite the calluses. I'm not that easy to kill, Amy. I promise you that. She didn't know who moved first. Maybe they both did, drawn together by something stronger than fear or logic. Her lips met his, tentative at first, then desperate as 3 weeks of running and hiding and loneliness poured into the kiss. Seth's arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened into something claiming and fierce. The amplification effect exploded between them, golden light flooding the room, his alpha power surging to heights that should have been impossible, energy crackling in the air like lightning about to strike. They broke apart, both breathing hard, foreheads pressed together as the light slowly faded. You're not just a healer, Seth said, his voice filled with awe and something that might have been concern. Amy looked into his amber eyes and saw her reflection there, a woman with a gift she'd never fully understood, a power that could change everything. Or destroy it. Morning light filtered through the shutters, pale and cold. The storm had passed in the night, leaving behind an eerie stillness broken only by the occasional drip of melting snow. Amy woke to find Seth already awake, standing by the window with the rigid posture of someone who'd been wrestling with a difficult decision. The innkeeper says the road won't be passable until tomorrow, he said without turning. The snow drifts are too deep. Amy sat up, acutely aware of how close they'd been just hours ago, of the golden light that had pulsed between them.
One more day, then. Amy.
Seth turned to face her, and something in his expression made her stomach tighten. I haven't been completely honest with you about who I am. The words hit like a physical blow. What? I told you I was a soldier investigating raids. He ran a hand through his silver hair, a gesture that seemed almost nervous. That's true, but it's not the whole truth. I'm not just any soldier. Amy stood slowly, instinctively reaching for her satchel. Then who are you? My name is Seth Blackwood. I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. The words came out quiet but firm. I travel in disguise because there's a traitor somewhere in my own council, and I couldn't risk anyone knowing I was investigating personally. Shock rendered her momentarily speechless. The Alpha King. She'd been sharing a bed with the Alpha King, had kissed him, had felt that impossible connection with someone so far above her station it was laughable. You lied to me. The words came out sharper than she intended. I withheld information, Seth corrected gently. Everything else I told you was true. My parents really were killed by raiders.
I really do have nightmares.
And what happened between us last night, that was real, Amy. The mate bond doesn't care about crowns or titles. But you knew. You knew I was running, vulnerable, and she pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to process. I told you things. Personal things. And I'm honored you trusted me with them. He took a step closer, then stopped when she flinched. I'm telling you now because I need you to understand the scope of what we're dealing with. This isn't just about raiders anymore. If what I suspect is true, if your village was targeted specifically, then you need protection that only I can provide. Amy lowered her hands, meeting his amber gaze. Beneath the shock and anger was a growing realization. Seth had resources. Power. The ability to actually do something about the attacks instead of just running from them. You said you're investigating attacks on healer communities, she said slowly. How many? 8 in the last 3 months. All burned to the ground. No survivors. His jaw tightened. Until you. The weight of that settled over her like a shroud. The man who led the attack on my village, Amy said, decision crystallizing. I saw his face. I could identify him. Seth went very still. You're certain? In answer, Amy pulled charcoal and parchment from her healer's satchel. She'd used them before for sketching medicinal herbs. Her hands trembled as she began to draw, but the scarred face was burned into her memory with perfect clarity. Cold gray eyes. Distinctive scar bisecting the left eyebrow. Sharp features that would have been handsome without the cruelty etched into every line. She worked in silence while Seth watched, adding details as they surfaced. The particular set of his jaw, the way he'd held himself with casual authority while ordering executions. When she finished, she held out the sketch. Seth took it, and the color drained from his face. For a long moment, he simply stared at the drawing, his expression cycling through disbelief, denial, and finally settling on something that looked like grief. This is Marcus, he said, his voice hollow. My royal advisor. The man I've trusted for 10 years. Amy felt the words like a punch to her chest. You're certain? I'd recognize him anywhere. Seth's hand clenched around the parchment, crumpling the edges. He's been with me since I took the throne. He was my father's advisor before that. I thought. He cut himself off, jaw working. I trusted him with everything. I'm sorry, Amy whispered, understanding the particular pain of betrayal from someone who should have been safe. Seth moved to the table, spreading the drawing flat despite its creases. 8 healer communities attacked in 3 months. All of them in territories Marcus directly oversees. He's been reporting them to me as random raids, disorganized violence. His finger traced patterns Amy couldn't see. But they're not random at all, are they? They're coordinated, deliberate. They were looking for something specific, Amy said, remembering the words that had haunted her nightmares. When I was hiding in the cellar, I heard Marcus giving orders. He told his soldiers to find the amplifier. Someone who could boost others' abilities. He said she was there somewhere. Seth's head snapped up. An amplifier. That's what you are. I didn't even know until last night, Amy protested. I thought I was just a healer with moderately strong gifts. Nothing special. But you are special. Seth's voice held a note of terrible understanding. If the Shadow Council is trying to build an enhanced army, a healer who can amplify other wolves' powers would be invaluable. They could make ordinary soldiers unstoppable. The full scope of it crashed over Amy like a wave. They're going to keep attacking healer communities. Keep killing people. Until they find me. Or until we stop them. Seth met her eyes. You're the only witness who can identify Marcus. The only one who survived. With your testimony, I can bring him to justice. Fear clawed at Amy's throat. You want me to go back? To face him? I want you to help me save the other healers he's hunting. Seth's voice was intense, urgent. You don't have to fight, Amy. But you have information that can stop this. Work with me. I'm a healer, not a warrior, she said, the words feeling hollow even as she spoke them. I can't fight people like him. I run. That's what I do. That's what's kept me alive. And how long will running keep you alive? The question was gentle but unrelenting. If Marcus knows you exist, if he knows you're an amplifier, he won't stop looking. The southern sanctuaries won't protect you from someone with his resources. But I can. By using me as bait. The bitterness in her voice surprised her. By giving you a choice, Seth corrected. You can run, and I'll do what I can to protect you from a distance. Or you can stand with me. Help me identify other conspirators. Testify against Marcus. Use what you witnessed to bring them down before they kill anyone else. Amy thought of Elder Miriam's final words. The screaming. The other healers who'd been dragged away, while she hid like a coward. How many more villages would burn while she ran? If I do this, she said slowly, I need your word that you'll treat me as a partner. Not some fragile thing to be protected and sheltered. Not a liability. Amy, promise me, Seth. Or I walk out that door right now and take my chances with the snow. Seth studied her for a long moment, And she saw him recalibrating, seeing her not as someone to save, but as someone who could stand beside him. I promise.
Partners.
Equal say in decisions that affect you. And if things get dangerous, you don't get to make choices for me. His jaw clenched, clearly struggling with that one. I can't promise not to want to protect you. The mate bond won't let me be indifferent to your safety. I'm not asking for indifference. I'm asking for respect. Amy held his gaze. Can you give me that? After a moment, Seth nodded.
Yes.
I can. The weight of the decision settled over her, terrifying and liberating in equal measure. No more running. No more hiding. For the first time since the massacre, Amy was choosing to stand and fight, even if the weapon she wielded was truth instead of steel. Then I'll go with you to your garrison, she said. I'll testify against Marcus. I'll help identify anyone else involved in the conspiracy. She took a breath. And maybe, if we're very lucky, we'll stop them before they destroy anyone else's home. Seth crossed the room and took her hand, that same electric spark jumping between them. Thank you. I know this isn't easy. Nothing worth doing is, Amy said, echoing words Elder Miriam had told her a lifetime ago. Outside, snow continued to melt in the pale sunlight. One more day trapped in this inn with her mate, the Alpha King, before they rode toward either justice or destruction. Amy couldn't say which terrified her more. The fortress appeared on the horizon like something carved from the mountain itself, massive stone walls that had withstood centuries of sieges, watchtowers bristling with armed sentries, iron gates thick enough to stop a battering ram. Amy's breath caught as they rode closer, the sheer scale of it making her feel impossibly small. This was Seth's world. Power and soldiers and strategic warfare. So far removed from her quiet village life that they might as well have been different realms entirely. Steady, Seth murmured beside her, sensing her tension. You belong here as much as anyone. She wasn't sure she believed that, but she straightened in her saddle anyway. The gates opened at their approach, soldiers snapping to attention with synchronized precision. Your Majesty, they said in unison, and Amy watched Seth transform from the man who'd held her through nightmares into the Alpha King, shoulders squared, presence commanding, every inch a ruler. A woman strode across the courtyard to meet them, all lean muscle and battle-scarred confidence. Dark hair pulled into a severe braid, intelligent eyes that missed nothing, a sword at her hip that looked well used. She bowed briefly to Seth, then turned her sharp gaze on Amy with open assessment. Commander Lydia, Seth said. This is Amy, the survivor I mentioned. Lydia's eyebrows rose fractionally. The healer from the Northern Massacre? Her tone was carefully neutral, but Amy heard the skepticism underneath. One small woman who'd survived when trained warriors hadn't. It probably seemed unlikely at best, suspicious at worst. I hid, Amy said bluntly, meeting Lydia's eyes. While everyone else fought and died, I hid in a cellar like a coward. That's how I survived. Something shifted in Lydia's expression, not warmth exactly, but a grudging respect for honesty. Survival isn't cowardice. It's practical. She glanced at Seth. She saw the attackers? She saw Marcus, Seth said, and Lydia's entire body went rigid. Inside.
Now.
The commander's voice cut through the courtyard noise like a blade. The war room smelled of leather and parchment and old stone. Maps covered every surface, marked with colored pins and strategic notations that Amy couldn't decipher. Lydia swept aside reports to clear the central table, then spread out a territorial map of the Northern Kingdom. Show me, she said simply. Seth began marking locations with small red stones, 8 of them, scattered across the northern territories. Amy watched a pattern emerge, each attack site forming a rough arc across regions she vaguely recognized from travelers' tales. All of these communities had healers with documented rare gifts, Seth explained, his finger tracing connections between the sites. Amplification, prophetic abilities, rapid regeneration. None of them were random targets. Lydia leaned over the map, her expression darkening. These territories all fall under Marcus's oversight. He's been the one reporting these incidents to you. reporting them as disorganized raids, Seth said bitterly. Tragic, but inevitable border violence. Except they're not disorganized at all. Lydia pulled out a separate document, Marcus's travel itinerary from the past 3 months. She laid it beside the map, and Amy's stomach turned as the correlation became obvious. Every attack had occurred within a week of Marcus visiting that region. There's more, Lydia said, her voice tight. 3 weeks ago, Marcus requisitioned 200 troops. Said it was for reinforced border patrol in the Eastern Territories. Standard protocol, so I approved it. She met Seth's eyes. Those troops never reported to the Eastern Garrison. They vanished completely. He's building a private army, Seth said, the words heavy with terrible certainty. Amy stared at the map, at the red stones marking communities that no longer existed, at the pattern of deliberate destruction. How many people died in these attacks? Estimated 300 across all 8 sites, Lydia said quietly. Mostly healers and those who tried to protect them. 300 lives. 300 families destroyed. And Marcus had orchestrated it all while sitting at Seth's right hand, offering counsel and sympathy and lies. There's something else you need to see, Lydia said, pulling out another file. Our intelligence network has been tracking suspicious activity among certain council members. Thorne specifically. She spread out surveillance reports. He's been meeting with Marcus in secret. Late-night conferences in locations outside official channels. Seth studied the reports. Financial discrepancies? Significant ones. Funds diverted from the royal treasury to accounts we can't trace. Enough gold to equip and supply a small army. Lydia's jaw clenched. Thorne's authorizing the transfers through legitimate channels, making it look like routine military expenditures. Amy's breath caught. Thorne. Council member Thorne? Both Seth and Lydia turned to her. You know him? Seth asked. He came to my village 2 months before the attack. Amy's mind raced back, pulling up the memory she'd barely registered at the time. He said he was conducting a census of gifted healers for the kingdom's records. Asked questions about our abilities, our training, who had the strongest gifts. Her voice dropped. Elder Miriam didn't trust him. She told him we were just basic healers, nothing special. She lied to protect us. And 2 months later, your village burned, Lydia said grimly. Seth's hands flattened on the table. The conspiracy goes deeper than Marcus. We're looking at multiple council members working together. Lydia moved to a locked cabinet and retrieved a leather-bound ledger. We found this in a raided Shadow Council supply depot last month. Took our codebreakers 2 weeks to decrypt it. She opened to a marked page. It's a registry. Every healer with rare gifts across the kingdom, cataloged by ability and location. Amy leaned over the ledger, her heart pounding. Names filled the pages in Marcus's precise handwriting. Beside each name, gift descriptions, village locations, threat assessments. Her eyes scanned down until they caught on her own name. Amy Thorne. Clearwater Village. Gift. Advanced healing. Amplification confirmed. Priority target. Do not kill. Capture for enhancement program. The room tilted. He knew. Marcus knew exactly what I could do before he ever attacked. And he's still hunting you, Seth said softly. Amy's gaze dropped to other entries marked with red ink. Captured appeared beside 12 names, with locations listed as Compound 7, Eastern Border. He's not just killing healers, she whispered. He's taking specific ones alive. Look, these 12 are all marked captured. They're being held somewhere. Seth's face had gone ashen. An enhancement program. He's forcing them to amplify his soldiers. We have to find them, Amy said urgently. If they're still alive, we have to get them out. Lydia was already moving, pulling out Eastern Territory maps. Our intelligence suggests Marcus has been operating from a fortified compound near the eastern border. Here. She marked a location deep in contested territory. It's technically still kingdom land, but isolated enough that he could run operations without drawing attention. How many troops would he have stationed there? Seth asked. Based on the requisition numbers? At least 200 enhanced soldiers if he's been using the captured healers to boost them. Lydia's expression was grim. That's not including any Shadow Council forces he's allied with. Then we gather our forces and storm it, Amy said. With what? Lydia countered sharply. We'd need twice that number to assault a fortified position. And the moment Marcus gets word that Seth is mobilizing troops, he'll know we're coming. He'll kill the hostages and disappear. Amy felt the plan crumbling before it could form. So, we do nothing? Let those healers suffer? We gather evidence, Seth said carefully. Build an ironclad case that even the council can't ignore. Then we move with legal authority backing us. By the time we do that, they'll be dead. Amy's voice rose despite her effort to control it. Or we rush in unprepared and ensure they die. Lydia shot back. Amy turned to Seth. You promised to treat me as a partner. Equal say in decisions that affect me. This affects more than just you. Then let me help make the decision. She planted her hands on the table. Use me as bait. Let Marcus think I'm coming to him willingly, that I'll surrender in exchange for the other healers' lives. Your forces can follow at a distance. Wait for my signal. Absolutely not, Seth said flatly.
Why?
Because it's dangerous? Everything about this is dangerous. Because Marcus wants you specifically, Seth said, voice tight with controlled fury. You walk into that compound and you're giving him exactly what he needs to create an unstoppable army. Or, I'm giving you the opening you need to take him down, Amy countered. Lydia watched them both with sharp eyes. It's tactically sound, she said slowly. Marcus expects the king to come eventually, but he won't expect the target to deliver herself. It would give us the element of surprise. Don't encourage this, Seth snapped. I'm being realistic. Lydia crossed her arms. The girl has a point, and if she's truly your mate, her safety matters to you personally, which means you'll plan this better than any operation you've ever run. Seth looked at Amy, conflict written across his face. There has to be another way. Find one and I'll take it, Amy said. But until then, this is our best option to save those healers. You know it is. The silence stretched taut between them. Finally, Seth exhaled roughly. Compromise. You come with us to the eastern garrison. We scout the compound, gather intelligence. If and only if there's no better option, we consider using you as part of the strategy. But you stay protected by Lydia's best warriors at all times. It wasn't what Amy wanted, but she recognized the concession for what it was. Agreed. Lydia nodded approval. I'll select the team. We leave at dawn. As they filed out of the war room, Amy's eyes returned to the ledger still open on the table. 12 names, marked captured. 12 healers suffering so Marcus could build his perfect army. She would free them.
Or die trying.
Dawn broke cold and unforgiving as they departed the garrison. Seth, Amy, Lydia, and 6 warriors handpicked for their skill and discretion. The mountain pass stretched before them like a serpent's spine, narrow trails clinging to cliff faces that dropped into oblivion. Amy's horse balked at the first steep incline, and she gritted her teeth, urging it forward with more determination than skill. She'd ridden before, but never terrain like this, never paths where one misstep meant death on the rocks below. Need a hand? Seth asked, appearing beside her with that infuriating ease he had in the saddle. I'm fine. The words came out sharper than intended. She was acutely aware of the warriors watching, assessing whether the Alpha King's mysterious healer would slow them down. Seth's amber eyes held understanding, but he said nothing, just stayed close enough to intervene if her horse stumbled. Protective without being overbearing. It should have annoyed her. Instead, it made something warm unfurl in her chest. The pass narrowed as they climbed, forcing them into single file. Wind shrieked through the peaks, carrying the thread of snow that could trap them for days. Amy's fingers went numb inside her gloves, her thighs screaming from the constant effort of staying mounted on the treacherous path.
She didn't complain.
Wouldn't give them reason to doubt her. By the time they made camp that first night, every muscle in Amy's body felt like it had been beaten with rocks. She dismounted with as much grace as she could manage, which wasn't much, and immediately set about helping with camp duties rather than collapsing like she wanted to. "You don't have to prove anything," Lydia said quietly, appearing beside her with bedrolls. "We know you're not a warrior. That's not why you're here." "Then why am I here?" Amy asked, too exhausted for pretense. "Because you're the king's mate. And because you survived when no one else did." Lydia's gaze was steady. "Both of those things make you valuable. Own it." After rations and a fire that did little against the mountain cold, Seth volunteered them both for first watch. They sat on opposite sides of the camp perimeter, close enough to talk but far enough to maintain propriety, with 6 warriors sleeping nearby. The stars overhead were impossibly bright, undimmed by village lights or forest canopy. Amy had forgotten how beautiful the night sky could be when you weren't running for your life. "Can't sleep?" Seth's voice carried softly across the distance. "Too much thinking." Amy pulled her cloak tighter. "What happens after we stop Marcus?"
Assuming we survive,
"We bring him to trial. Execute him for treason and mass murder. Root out the other conspirators." Seth's tone was matter-of-fact, like discussing weather. "That's not what I meant." Amy hesitated, then pushed forward. "What happens to me? Even if we dismantle the Shadow Council, I'm still an amplifier. There will always be someone who wants to use that. Chain me up and turn me into a weapon." The silence stretched long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then Seth moved closer, settling beside her with his back against the same boulder. "Then you stay with me. As my mate, as queen. No one would dare touch you." "I don't know how to be a queen," Amy said, the fear she'd been carrying finally given voice. "I was a village healer. I know herbs and sutures and how to set bones. I don't know politics or strategy or how to rule a kingdom." "You think I knew how to be king when my parents died and they put this crown on my head?" Seth's laugh was bitter. "I was 17 and terrified. I made mistakes that cost lives. But I learned." He turned to face her. "And you're already extraordinary, Amy. You saved 30 people today, without even trying. Imagine what you could do with resources and training. You have a lot of faith in someone you met 3 days ago. The mate bond doesn't lie." His hand found hers in the darkness. "And neither do you. I've seen you scared and grieving and exhausted, and through all of it, you've chosen to stand up instead of hide. That's what makes a queen. Not bloodlines or training, character." Amy let herself lean against his shoulder, let herself imagine a future that extended beyond the next crisis. It felt dangerous and wonderful in equal measure. "I'm still terrified," she admitted.
Good.
"Fear keeps you careful." Seth's arm came around her. "We'll figure it out together." The second day brought them lower into forested valleys where the air turned warmer, but no less treacherous. They just stopped to water the horses when the smell hit. Acrid smoke carried on the afternoon breeze. Seth went rigid, already reaching for his spyglass. Through it, Amy could see his expression darken into something terrible. "What is it?" Lydia demanded. "Smoke. South, maybe 3 miles." He handed her the glass. "Riverside Village." Lydia swore viciously. "That's not on Marcus's known route. He's expanding operations." Seth was already mounting. "Or, he knows we're getting close, and he's accelerating the timeline." "We should scout first," Lydia argued. "Assess numbers before engaging. People are dying right now." Seth's voice carried absolute authority. We're-eyed. Hard. They reached Riverside Village to find hell incarnate. Flames consumed thatched roofs, sending black smoke churning into the sky. Soldiers in dark armor dragged screaming villagers from their homes while others ransacked buildings with brutal efficiency. Amy spotted the Shadow Council insignia on their breastplates, the same symbol she'd seen in Marcus's ledger. Seth's warriors charged without hesitation, crashing into the raiders with devastating force. Lydia's tactical mind was already positioning troops, creating defensive formations to protect the fleeing villagers. Amy saw a child lying motionless in the dirt, a woman kneeling beside him wailing. Without thinking, she ran toward them, her healer's instincts overriding self-preservation. The boy was maybe 7, his chest crushed by falling debris. Amy's hands moved on autopilot, channeling healing energy, feeling for the broken ribs, the punctured lung. She poured everything she had into him, desperate and focused. Then something extraordinary happened. Her amplification ability activated like a dam breaking. Golden light exploded from her hands, flooding not just the child but the warriors fighting nearby. She felt their strength surge, their movements becoming faster, their strikes hitting harder. The wounded villagers around her began healing at impossible speeds, cuts closing, broken bones mending. Lydia noticed immediately, her strategic mind seizing the advantage. She repositioned warriors to fight within Amy's amplification radius, creating a fighting force that moved like liquid death. The tide of battle shifted dramatically, but Amy barely noticed. She was locked into healing, moving from victim to victim with single-minded determination. The crushed child gasped back to life. An elderly woman's burned hands regenerated. A warrior's severed artery sealed itself shut. 20 people. 30. She lost count, lost awareness of everything except the desperate need to save them. The raiders retreated, and through the smoke Amy saw him. Marcus's lieutenant from her nightmares, the man who'd stood beside the scarred advisor while her village burned. Their eyes met across the battlefield, and his expression twisted into cruel satisfaction before he melted into the forest. Amy took one more step toward another wounded villager, and the world tilted sideways. Seth caught her before she hit the ground, his face swimming in her darkening vision. Amy, stay with me. So tired, she mumbled, her body feeling like it belonged to someone else. Did we save them? You saved them. You saved everyone. His voice sounded terrified, which seemed wrong. Kings weren't supposed to be afraid. Darkness pulled at her, warm and inviting. She felt Seth's alpha presence surge, felt him trying to channel strength into her through the mate bond.
But there was nothing left to anchor to.
She'd given it all away. When consciousness returned, she was lying on bedrolls near a hastily made camp, Seth's face hovering above hers with an expression caught between relief and fury. What were you thinking? He demanded. You could have died. What was I supposed to do? Amy's voice came out hoarse. Let them die instead? You can't save people if you're dead. She saved 32 lives today. Lydia's calm voice cut through the tension. The commander knelt beside them, her expression unreadable. Healed injuries that should have been fatal. Amplified our warriors enough that we won a battle we should have lost. She met Seth's eyes. That's what healers do, Your Majesty. They give until there's nothing left to give. Seth's jaw clenched, clearly wanting to argue, but Amy saw the moment he recognized the truth. She hadn't been reckless. She'd been exactly what she was supposed to be. Your gift drains you, he said quietly. Every time you amplify others, you're burning your own life force. Amy nodded weakly. I know. I felt it. Then we need to be smarter about how you use it. Seth's hand found hers, warm and solid. Because I refuse to lose you to save others. We find a balance, or we find another way. In the distance, Riverside Village still smoldered, but its people lived. 32 souls saved because Amy had been willing to give everything. She'd do it again in a heartbeat. The survivors huddled in makeshift shelters as Lydia's warriors organized evacuation routes. Amy moved among them with what little healing energy she'd recovered, tending minor wounds and offering what comfort she could. That's when she noticed 3 women sitting apart from the others, their eyes holding a haunted quality she recognized too well. Healers. She could sense their gifts like calling to like. The youngest, barely 20 with dark hair and hollow cheeks, looked up as Amy approached. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by something like awe. You're her. Amy, the amplifier from the registry. Amy knelt beside them, keeping her voice low. You've seen the registry? We escaped from Marcus's compound 2 days ago, the young woman said. Her hands trembled as she spoke. I'm Clara. These are Nora and Beth. We've been held there for 5 weeks. The other 2 women nodded, and Amy saw the bruises on their wrists where chains had rubbed skin raw. Nora, older with gray-streaked hair, spoke next. They keep healers in the lower levels. Chain us to walls and force us to enhance their soldiers. 8 hours a day, sometimes more. Those who resist. Her voice broke. They kill them in front of the others as examples. Amy's stomach churned. How many healers are still there? 12 when we escaped, Beth whispered, her eyes downcast. Maybe fewer now. Some don't survive the strain. Clara leaned forward urgently. Marcus is obsessed with finding you. He talks about you constantly, shows you're drawing to new captives, asks if anyone knows where you might have fled. He believes with your power, he can create an unstoppable army. Soldiers who never tire, who heal instantly from any wound, whose strength increases 100-fold. That's why we had to run, Nora added. When we heard he was sending raids south, we knew he'd eventually find you. We thought if we could warn someone maybe. She gestured helplessly at the destroyed village around them. Amy took Clara's hands. You did warn us. And we're going to stop him. She was bringing their testimony to Seth and Lydia when the shout came from the perimeter. Wagon approaching. Northeast Road. Seth grabbed his spyglass, and Amy saw his expression harden. Through the smoke haze, a prison wagon lumbered into view, iron-barred and pulled by 4 horses. Even from this distance, Amy could see pale hands gripping the bars, could hear faint cries for help. More captives, Lydia said grimly, being transported to the compound. We intercept, Seth ordered immediately. Formation Delta. We hit fast, free the prisoners, scatter before reinforcements arrive. Lydia's warriors moved with practiced efficiency, positioning themselves along the road for a perfect ambush. Amy stayed back with Clara and the others, watching as Seth's team prepared to strike. The wagon drew closer. Seth raised his hand, ready to signal the attack. Then the forest exploded with soldiers. They poured from the trees on all sides, 50, 60, more than Amy could count, all wearing Shadow Council armor. Marcus's warriors crashed into Seth's forces before they could react, turning the ambush into a massacre. It's a trap. Lydia's voice cut through the chaos. Defensive positions, but there were too many. 3 soldiers for every one of Seth's warriors. Lydia's team fought with desperate skill, but they were being overwhelmed. And then Amy saw Marcus's lieutenant stride forward, a torch in his hand and that same cruel smile she remembered from her nightmares. He didn't join the fight. Instead, he walked calmly to the prison wagon where terrified healers screamed for help. He threw the torch inside. The dry straw bedding caught instantly. Flames roared up the wooden sides, and the screaming intensified, desperate, agonized, the sound of people burning alive. Amy ran before thought could stop her, before Seth's shouted no could reach her ears. She ran toward the inferno with only one thought. Not again. Not like my village. Not again. Smoke seared her lungs as she reached the wagon. The heat was unbearable, flames licking at the iron bars from inside. She grabbed the locking mechanism, her hands blistering instantly on the superheated metal. Amy, get back. Seth appeared beside her, but she ignored him, focusing everything on the lock. It gave way with a screech of tortured metal, and she yanked the door open. 6 healers were inside, chained to the wagon walls, choking on smoke. Amy stumbled in, her healer's satchel miraculously still at her hip. She fumbled for her lockpicks with hands that barely functioned. That's when she heard the groan of straining wood above her. The main support beam, fully engulfed in flames, began to collapse. Burning timber weighing hundreds of pounds, falling directly toward her and the chained healers. Seth threw himself beneath it. His alpha strength was monstrous. Amy had seen him fight, had felt his power, but even he couldn't hold this. The beam pressed down, forcing him to his knees. His hands burned where they gripped the timber, skin blackening, but he didn't let go. Get them out, he roared through gritted teeth. Amy, get them out now. Terror seized her, more complete than anything she'd felt since the massacre. Seth was going to die holding this beam. He was going to burn to death so she could save strangers, and she couldn't. Her amplification ability detonated. Golden light exploded from her body like a star-going nova, flooding the wagon with radiance that outshone the flames. Every ounce of power she possessed, every bit of life force she could channel, she poured into Seth through the mate bond. His alpha strength multiplied, tenfold, 20-fold, beyond anything natural. The beam that had been crushing him became weightless in his grip. He hurled it aside with a roar that shook the wagon's frame, the burning timber crashing through the wall and creating an exit. "Go!" Seth grabbed Amy with one arm, dragging her toward the opening while she frantically unlocked the last healer's chains. His other hand seized two of the freed healers, and they stumbled through the flames. Lydia appeared in the gap, pulling people through. Warriors formed a human chain, passing the rescued healers to safety. The wagon collapsed behind them in a shower of sparks and burning wood, the entire structure folding in on itself exactly where they'd been standing seconds before. Amy hit the ground hard, her vision swimming. She'd given too much again, burned through her reserves amplifying Seth. But the healers were alive. All 6 of them, gasping and crying and alive. Through the battle chaos and smoke, she saw him. Marcus stood on a ridge overlooking the carnage, unmistakable even at this distance, with that distinctive scar across his eyebrow. He wasn't fighting, wasn't directing troops. He was simply watching, waiting. Their eyes met across the battlefield, and Marcus smiled, cold and confident and terrifying. Then he turned his horse and retreated into the forest, his lieutenant following. "Pursue!" Seth started forward, but Lydia grabbed his arm. "We're outnumbered and exhausted. We need to retreat while we can." Seth looked like he wanted to argue, but a warrior stumbled past them, bleeding from a dozen wounds, and reality crashed back. They couldn't win this fight. Not today. As they began their tactical withdrawal, one of Lydia's scouts found something pinned to a tree at the edge of the clearing, a map and a note, clearly left for them to find. Seth unfolded the parchment, his expression darkening as he read aloud. "Come for the others, little amplifier. 12 more just like these, waiting for their savior. My compound's location is marked. I'll be waiting." He looked at the map, a precise drawing showing the route to Marcus's stronghold. "He's taunting us." "He's setting another trap," Lydia said flatly. "He knows you'll come for the captives. He's counting on it." "He's counting on me," Amy said quietly, looking at the note again. The message wasn't for Seth. It was for her. Marcus wanted her specifically, and he was confident enough to literally give them directions to his fortress. Because he believed he could capture her even if she came with an army. Seth's burned hands clenched around the map, and Amy saw the calculation in his eyes, the impossible choice between rescuing innocent healers and protecting his mate. Marcus had backed them into a corner, and they all knew it. The only question was whether they'd walk into his trap anyway. They limped back to the garrison with 9 rescued healers and twice as many wounded warriors. Amy moved through the infirmary in a daze, healing what she could with what little energy remained, but her mind kept circling back to the faces she hadn't saved. The villagers who died before she reached them. The healers who might have been in that wagon if they'd arrived minutes earlier. "You need to stop," Lydia said, physically blocking her path to another wounded soldier. "You're swaying on your feet. Rest, or you'll be useless when we need you most." Amy wanted to argue, but her legs chose that moment to buckle. She caught herself against the wall, breathing hard. "Seth's in his quarters," Lydia said, her tone gentler. "He won't let anyone tend his hands. Says they'll heal on their own. Maybe you can talk sense into him." She found him sitting by the window, staring at Marcus's map spread across the desk. His hands were wrapped in rough bandages already seeping through with blood and burn fluid. The acrid smell of charred flesh made Amy's stomach turn. "Those need proper treatment," she said from the doorway. Seth didn't look up. "They'll heal." "Not without infection, they won't. And you can't fight Marcus if you can't hold a sword." Amy crossed the room, pulling her healer supplies from her satchel. "Let me see them." "Amy, you're exhausted. So are you. Let me do this." She unwrapped the bandages carefully, wincing at the damage underneath. Second-degree burns across both palms, some areas down to raw muscle. This is going to hurt. I've had worse. But his jaw clenched as she began cleaning the wounds. Amy channeled healing energy as gently as she could, focusing on preventing infection rather than rapid regeneration. As her power flowed into him, the mate bond hummed to life, that golden thread between them strengthening, settling deeper. She felt his pain as if it were her own, but also his relief as her gift began its work. "I thought you were going to die in that wagon," Seth said quietly. "When the beams started falling, I thought I was about to watch you burn. But I didn't. We saved them. Because you nearly killed yourself amplifying me." His free hand caught hers, stopping her work. "Amy, you can't keep doing this. Every time you use your gift, you're trading your life for someone else's. Eventually, you'll have nothing left to give. Then I'll have died doing something that mattered." She met his eyes. "I'm tired of running, Seth. Tired of hiding and watching people die because I'm too afraid to act. If I have this power, I need to use it, not if it kills you. Everyone dies eventually. At least this way, I choose how." She resumed healing his hands, feeling the skin slowly knit together under her touch. "Marcus has 12 more healers chained in that compound. 12 people suffering what Clara and the others endured. I can't walk away from that." Seth was quiet for a long moment, his amber eyes searching her face. "I've already lost everyone I loved. My parents, my mentors, everyone I trusted except Lydia. I can't lose you too. I won't survive it." The raw vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in Amy's chest. "Then don't make me choose between saving you and saving myself. Let me stand beside you. Let me fight. You're asking me to use you as bait for a man who wants to chain you up and turn you into a weapon. I'm telling you that I'm already his target." Amy finished healing his hands, the skin still pink and tender, but functional. "The only question is whether we use that strategically or pretend I'm not in danger." The War Council convened an hour later. Seth, Lydia, 5 senior commanders, and Amy. The map dominated the table, Marcus's compound marked with insulting clarity. "We need more troops," Commander Brennan argued, a grizzled veteran with scars mapping his face. "At least 500 to assault a fortified position." "Which will take weeks to mobilize," Lydia countered. "By then, Marcus will have moved the prisoners or killed them. So we rush in undermanned and lose everyone," another commander said flatly. "Every day we wait, more healers suffer," Amy interjected, her voice cutting through the tactical debate. "How many more villages does Marcus burn while we plan the perfect assault?" "The girl has a point," Brennan conceded grudgingly. Seth had been silent, studying the map with an intensity that made Amy nervous. "Marcus wants Amy specifically. He's made that clear. Any plan that doesn't account for that is tactical fantasy." "Then we give him what he wants," Amy said, and the room went silent. "Use me as bait. I approach the compound alone, claim I'm surrendering in exchange for releasing the captive healers. Your forces surround the compound. Wait for my signal." The explosion of protests was immediate and loud, Seth's voice rising above them all. "Absolutely not. We're not discussing this." "Why not?" Amy challenged. "It's tactically sound. It's suicide," Seth snapped. "Marcus gets exactly what he needs to build his enhanced army, and you get chained in a dungeon. That's not tactics, that's sacrifice." "I'm being hunted by name." Amy's voice rose to match his. "I'm already in the trap. At least this way, we control when and how it springs. You don't know what he'll do to you. And you don't get to make this decision for me." The room fell silent at her outburst. Amy took a breath, forcing calm. "This is my life. My gift. My choice. You promised to treat me as a partner, Seth. So partner with me. Don't protect me from my own decisions." Seth's hands flattened on the table, his control visibly fraying. "I won't sacrifice you for tactical advantage." "It's not your sacrifice to make," Amy said quietly. "It's mine." Lydia cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should give them the room." The commanders filed out with varying expressions of discomfort, leaving Seth and Amy alone in tense silence. "I've already lost everyone," Seth said finally, his voice raw. Everyone I've ever loved has been taken from me. The mate bond doesn't just connect us, Amy. It makes losing you unthinkable. Literally. If you die, I don't know if I'd survive it. And I've spent my whole life being protected, being told to hide, being treated like something fragile that needed sheltering. Amy moved around the table to face him. Elder Miriam died protecting me. My entire village burned so I could escape. I'm done being the reason good people die. I'm done being weak. You're not weak. Then stop treating me like I am. Her voice cracked. Let me stand beside you instead of behind you. Let me use this power for something other than running. Seth pulled her into his arms, and she felt him trembling. If we do this, we do it smart. You'll have protection, an escape route, and we use the mate bond. I'll feel what you feel, know if you're in danger. A real partnership, Amy said against his chest. A real partnership, he agreed reluctantly. But you promise me, if things go wrong, if Marcus gets too close, you run. You save yourself. If you promise the same. She pulled back to look at him. We both survive this, or neither of us makes reckless promises. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You're going to be impossible to protect as queen. Good thing you're not looking for someone to protect, then. You're looking for someone to fight beside. They spent the next hours planning with Clara, who provided detailed intelligence about the compound's layout. Guard rotations, entrance points, where the healers were kept chained in the lower levels. Every detail carved into memory. The plan was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. Amy would approach at dawn, alone and unarmed, claiming she'd surrender herself in exchange for the captive's release. Seth's forces would position overnight in the surrounding forest. The moment Amy confirmed the prisoner's location, they'd strike. One chance. If Marcus suspected the trap too soon, the healers died. The night before they departed, Seth found Amy on the garrison walls, staring at the eastern horizon, where Marcus's compound waited. Having second thoughts? He asked, settling beside her. Terrified thoughts, Amy admitted. But not second ones. Seth turned her to face him, amber eyes intense in the moonlight. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know, you've changed everything for me. The mate bond, yes, but also you. Your courage, your compassion, the way you refuse to hide even when hiding would be easier. You make me want to be worthy of you. You already are, Amy whispered. He kissed her then, not desperate like in the inn, but deep and claiming and full of promises about futures that might never come. Amy kissed him back with everything she had, pouring 3 days of trust and fear and growing love into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, the mate bond glowed golden and strong, an unbreakable tether between their souls. Come back to me, Seth said against her forehead. We come back together, Amy corrected. Or not at all. Tomorrow, they'd walk into Marcus's trap with their eyes open and a plan built on faith and desperation. Tonight, they held each other and pretended dawn would never come. Dawn broke blood red as Amy rode toward Marcus's compound, alone except for the weight of Seth's presence in her mind through the mate bond. The fortress rose from the landscape like a scar, high stone walls, watchtowers bristling with archers, iron gates that looked capable of withstanding a siege. This was where 12 healers suffered in chains, and where she'd either free them or join them. Her horses' hooves echoed too loud in the morning stillness. Guards appeared along the walls, crossbows tracking her approach. One shouted down to the courtyard, and Amy heard the alarm spread like wildfire through the compound. I'm here, she sent through the bond, feeling Seth's immediate surge of protective fury tempered by forced control. Stay hidden until my signal. The gates opened with a shriek of metal on metal. 20 soldiers poured out in formation, surrounding her before she'd even dismounted. Their armor bore the Shadow Council insignia, and their eyes held the cold efficiency of men who'd committed atrocities without flinching. Then Marcus himself strode through the gates, and Amy's breath caught. Seeing him through a cellar grate in firelight was nothing compared to this. The scar bisecting his eyebrow, cold gray eyes that assessed her like livestock, the cultured bearing of someone born to privilege who'd chosen cruelty. He smiled, and it was worse than any snarl. "The amplifier finally comes to me," he said, his voice smooth as poisoned honey. "I knew you would. They always do, the ones with hero complexes. So predictable." Amy dismounted with as much dignity as she could muster, keeping her hands visible and empty. "I'm here to make a deal. Me for the healers you're holding. Release them, and I'll work for you willingly. No resistance, no escape attempts." Marcus laughed, the sound genuinely amused. "You think I'm a fool? You're here to spy for your mate, to signal when you've located the prisoners so his forces can attack." He circled her slowly, and Amy fought the urge to flinch. "Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate that? I want Seth to attack. I've been preparing for it." Ice flooded Amy's veins. He knew. He'd known all along this was a trap, and he'd still invited them to spring it because he had a countertrap waiting. Marcus raised one hand, a casual gesture that triggered chaos. Archers appeared on the surrounding hillsides, dozens of them, positioned overnight in the forest where Seth's forces were supposed to be hiding. Arrows filled the air with deadly precision, raining down on positions Clara had assured them would provide cover. Through the mate bond, Amy felt Seth's shock transforming into combat fury. Warriors screamed. Lydia was shouting orders, trying to reorganize under fire while pinned down. "Did you really think I'd let your king waltz in here?" Marcus grabbed Amy's arm with bruising force, dragging her toward the compound. "I've been at this game longer than you've been alive, girl." Soldiers closed ranks around them, a moving wall of armor and weapons. Amy tried to pull free, but Marcus twisted her arm until she gasped. Inside the courtyard, he forced her to her knees on the stone, drawing his sword in one fluid motion. The blade pressed against her throat, cold and sharp enough that she felt a trickle of warm blood where it bit into her skin. "Send a messenger," Marcus ordered one of his lieutenants. "Tell the Alpha King his mate dies unless he presents himself unarmed within the next 5 minutes. No warriors, no weapons. Just him." Amy felt Seth's response through the bond: denial, rage, terror, and then his decision crystallizing with terrible clarity. He was going to do it. He was going to trade himself for her. "No," she sent desperately through their connection. "Don't you dare. We survive together or not at all." But she felt him moving anyway, felt his warriors trying to hold him back, while he fought toward the compound with single-minded determination. The messenger returned too quickly. "The king is approaching, sir. Alone and unarmed as you commanded." Marcus's smile widened. "Perfect. The Shadow Council will celebrate tonight, the day we captured both the Alpha King and his amplifier mate. The kingdom will fall within the week." Amy saw Seth emerge from the tree line, hands raised, silver hair disheveled and amber eyes locked on her with an intensity that made her heart break. He was really doing this, surrendering himself, his kingdom, his people, all for her. She couldn't let that happen. "One request," Amy said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Before you chain me, let me see the healers you're holding. Prove they're alive like you promised." Marcus pressed the blade harder. "You're in no position to make requests." "What does it matter? You've already won." Amy met his cold eyes. "Just let me see them. Let me know my surrender meant something." She felt his calculation, his arrogance. He thought her beaten, broken, no threat at all. "Very well. A final mercy before we put you to work." He hauled her to her feet, sword never leaving her throat. "Bring the king inside. Chain them both in the lower levels. Let them watch each other suffer." As the soldiers moved to see Seth, Amy stopped fighting her fear. Stopped trying to control the amplification ability that had terrified her since that first night at the inn. Instead, she surrendered to it completely. She reached deep, past the healing gift, past the amplification she'd accidentally triggered in others, down to the raw power that resided in her very bones. And this time, she didn't channel it outward. She amplified herself. Golden light detonated from her body like a star exploding. The shockwave hit with physical force, sending Marcus flying backward, his sword spinning from his grip. Soldiers were thrown like ragdolls, crashing into walls and each other. The stone courtyard cracked beneath her feet, spiderwebbing outward in jagged lines. The compound's walls fractured, chunks of stone tumbling free. Wooden gates splintered. The very foundations of Marcus's fortress shuddered under the onslaught of uncontrolled power. Amy staggered, the world tilting dangerously. She'd given too much again, burned through reserves she didn't have, but it was worth it to see Marcus's shocked expression as he struggled to rise. Then Seth was there, crashing through the damaged gates with Lydia and their warriors at his back. The arrow barrage had stopped, the archers on the hills either killed or scattered when Amy's power surge had disrupted their positions. The battle that followed was brief and brutal. Marcus's soldiers, scattered and disoriented by the explosion, fell quickly to Seth's organized assault. Lydia's tactical brilliance carved through their defenses like a blade through silk. Seth reached Amy as her legs gave out, catching her against his chest. "I've got you. You're safe now." "The healers," she mumbled, consciousness slipping. "Lower levels. Have to free them." "Lydia," Seth shouted, and the commander was already moving, taking warriors down into the compound's depths. Marcus was captured trying to flee through a side exit, dragged back into the courtyard bleeding and furious. Seth forced him to his knees with enough violence that Amy heard bones crack. "Where are the other healers?" Seth's voice was pure alpha command, the kind that made wolves instinctively submit. "The ones not here. Where did you send them?" Marcus spat blood, defiant even in defeat. "You think this ends with me? The Shadow Council has dozens like me, cells in every territory. We'll burn your kingdom to ash and build something better from the ruins."
Where are the
healers? Seth's hands clenched in Marcus's armor. "Most are at Council Member Thorne's estate," Marcus sneered. "But you're too late, Your Majesty. By now, they're already being used to enhance the rebel army. Your precious kingdom is falling while you waste time on heroic rescues." Amy pushed away from Seth's chest, fighting to stay conscious. "Thorne's estate. Where?" Marcus looked at her with something like respect in his cold eyes. "You really would burn yourself out to save strangers. Such a waste." He gave coordinates that Lydia immediately noted down. "How many?" Amy demanded. "How many healers at the estate?" 15 at last count. The strongest ones, the rarest gifts. We're using them to create an army that will make your mate's forces look like children playing with wooden swords." 15 healers. Suffering what Clara had described, maybe worse. And they had hours at most before Thorne realized Marcus had fallen. "We have to go now," Amy said, trying to stand and failing. "Every minute we wait." "You can barely stand," Seth said gently. "You've pushed yourself too far." "Then push me further." Amy grabbed his arm. "I didn't come this far to stop now." "Lydia, how many healers did you find below?" 12. Lydia called up from the entrance to the lower levels. "Alive but in bad shape. We're getting them out now." 12 saved. 15 still suffering. The math was simple and terrible. "Thorne's estate," Amy said, meeting Seth's eyes. "We end this today." Thorne's estate was a full day's ride north, and they had maybe 48 hours before the enhanced rebel army launched its attack on the kingdom. The math was brutal and simple: ride through exhaustion or lose everything. "Mount up," Seth ordered, his voice carrying the weight of command that brooked no argument. "We ride now, and don't stop until we reach Thorne's compound." Lydia began organizing the logistics with practiced efficiency, but Amy saw the concern in her expression. Their forces were battered from 2 consecutive battles, running on adrenaline and desperation. Half the warriors carried wounds, and their horses were near collapse. But the alternative was worse. Amy swayed in her saddle as they rode north, the world blurring at the edges. She'd burned through too much power amplifying herself, and her body was demanding rest she couldn't afford to give. Every jolt of the horse sent pain lancing through her skull. Seth rode beside her, close enough that she could feel his presence even through the exhaustion. As darkness fell and they pushed deeper into the night, he spoke quietly, his voice meant only for her. "When this is over," he said, "when you're safe and those healers are free, I want to complete the mate bond. Officially." the ceremony, the vows, everything. He glanced at her, amber eyes reflecting starlight. If you'll have me. Amy's throat tightened. I'm terrified. Everyone I've ever loved has died. My parents, Elder Miriam, my entire village. What if I lose you too? What if accepting this bond just means I'll have to watch you die? Then we'll have had this, Seth said softly.
Right now.
This moment, this fight, this partnership. Isn't that worth the risk of losing it someday? She thought about that, about 3 days at the frozen haven, and that had changed everything, about discovering her power through his touch, about choosing to stand instead of run. Yes, she whispered. When this is over, when we've saved them all. Yes. Seth's hand found hers in the darkness, squeezing gently. We survive this together. We build a future where healers are protected, where no child has to hide in a cellar watching their family burn, where your gift is honored, not hunted. That's my promise to you. And mine to you, Amy said, the vow settling into her bones like an oath. They rode through the night, stopping only to water the horses and force down rations that tasted like ash. Dawn found them approaching Thorne's estate, a sprawling manor that looked like innocence itself from the outside, elegant gardens and white stone walls gleaming in the early light. But Clara had described the dungeons beneath, and Seth's scouts confirmed the intelligence with grim efficiency. Over 100 soldiers patrolled the grounds, their movements too synchronized, too powerful. Enhanced warriors, boosted by the healers chained below. We're outnumbered, exhausted, and walking into a fortified position, Lydia said flatly, studying the estate through her spyglass. This is suicide. Then we make every strike count, Seth replied. He turned to Amy. Can you amplify our warriors? Strategic bursts, not the full explosion like at Marcus's compound. Amy assessed her reserves honestly. She was running on fumes and willpower, her body screaming for rest. If I push too hard, it'll kill me. Then we'll be careful. Small amplifications at critical moments.
Can you do that?
She nodded, terrified but determined. Tell me when and who. I'll make it count. The assault began as the sun crested the horizon. Seth's forces hit the gates like a battering ram, and Amy channeled her power with surgical precision. She amplified 3 warriors at a time, giving them just enough boost to overwhelm their enhanced opponents before switching to the next group. When they reached the iron gates, Amy poured everything she dared into Seth. His alpha strength multiplied until the metal itself seemed to fear him. He tore the gates from their hinges with his bare hands, the shriek of rending iron announcing their arrival like a war cry. Lydia led a strike team into the estate's depths, while Seth's forces held the courtyard in brutal combat. The enhanced rebels were monstrously strong, their movements inhumanly fast, but Seth's tactical brilliance combined with Amy's strategic amplification created chaos in their ranks. Inside the main hall, they found Thorne. The council members stood surrounded by 15 chained healers, their faces hollow and gray, their bodies trembling from extended use. His personal guard, a dozen warriors practically vibrating with amplified power, formed a wall of muscle and steel between him and justice. You're too late, Your Majesty, Thorne said, his cultured voice echoing in the vaulted chamber. The rebellion launches at sunset. Even if you kill me here, the Shadow Council has already won. Your kingdom falls today. Then I'll dismantle the council one traitor at a time, Seth replied, drawing his sword. Starting with you. The battle that followed was savage. Thorne's enhanced guards moved with impossible speed, their strength magnified beyond natural limits. Seth fought like something unleashed, amplified by Amy's carefully controlled power, but even he struggled against numbers and enhancement working in concert. Amy tried to reach the chained healers, but Thorne himself blocked her path, drawing a blade that looked too comfortable in his hands. The amplifier, he said, smiling coldly. You're the secret to his strength. Remove you and he falls. He lunged with practiced skill, and Amy barely dodged, her exhaustion making her movements sluggish. Seth tried to reach her, but 3 guards intercepted him, forcing him back. Through the mate bond, Amy felt his desperate fury, his terror of watching her die. Thorn's next strike caught her shoulder, pain exploding white-hot. She stumbled backward, crashing into the wall where the healers were chained. Their hands reached for her instinctively, and she felt their gifts, dying flames barely flickering, drained almost to nothing by weeks of forced enhancement. A choice crystallized with terrible clarity. She could amplify Seth, give him the power to cut through the guards and save her. Or she could amplify the healers, restore their strength, give them the chance to save themselves. Amy had never been good at saving herself anyway. She turned away from Seth, pressing her hands against the nearest healer's chains, and poured every ounce of power she possessed into the 15 dying souls surrounding her. Golden light flooded through the connections, not just healing but amplifying their own gifts, breaking the chains from the inside through sheer force of restored power. The cost was immediate and catastrophic. Amy's body began shutting down, her heart stuttering, vision going dark at the edges. She was burning out, giving too much, crossing the line from sacrifice into suicide. But the healers rose. 15 wolves with restored gifts and 3 weeks of rage turned their collective power on Thorn and his guards. Healing became weapon, bones forced to break and reset wrong, blood made to clot in living veins, flesh commanded to tear itself apart. The enhanced guards fell screaming. Thorn tried to run, but Nora, the gray-haired healer from Marcus's compound, caught him with a gesture that stopped his heart mid-beat. Amy didn't see the victory. Her heart had stopped, her body collapsing like a puppet with cut strings. She felt herself falling, felt the mate bond stretching thin and golden between her and Seth. Seth caught her, his voice breaking on her name. Amy.
No, no, no. Stay with me.
Please. But there was no pulse beneath his fingers. Her skin had gone cold, her chest still. Through their bond, he felt only absence where she should have been, a void that threatened to swallow him whole. The 15 healers surrounded them, recognizing what Amy had done, understanding the gift she'd given at the cost of everything. Move, Nora commanded, and the others formed a circle. Everyone link hands. We're bringing her back. They pooled their gifts, 15 healers working in perfect synchronization, led by Nora's centuries of experience. Golden light enveloped Amy's body, brighter than the sun streaming through the shattered windows. They poured life force into her, coaxing her heart to beat, her lungs to draw breath, her soul to return from wherever it had fled. Seconds stretched into eternity. Seth held Amy against his chest, feeling through the bond for any spark of her presence, finding only terrifying emptiness. Then, so faint he almost missed it, a flutter. Her heart struggling to restart, fighting against death with the same stubborn determination she'd shown fighting Marcus, fighting the Shadow Council, fighting every obstacle since that night at the Frozen Haven Inn. Her heart beat once.
Twice.
Settled into a rhythm that grew stronger with each pulse. Amy gasped, her eyes flying open, and Seth's relief crashed through the mate bond like a tidal wave. She was alive. Damaged and weak and barely conscious, but alive. You died, Seth said roughly, holding her like he'd never let go. Your heart stopped. You died saving them. Did it work? Amy's voice was barely a whisper. Are they free? Nora knelt beside them, tears streaming down her weathered face. We're free. All of us. Because of you. Around them, the estate lay in ruins. Thorn's body cooling on the marble floor. The Shadow Council's stronghold fallen. 27 healers rescued from a fate worse than death. And Amy, the village healer who'd thought herself weak, had saved them all. Amy woke to sunlight streaming through windows too grand to belong in any world she recognized. Silk sheets, vaulted ceilings painted with celestial scenes, the distant sound of a city awakening. For a disoriented moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then she saw Seth slumped in a chair beside the massive bed, silver hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes, still wearing his battle-stained clothes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days.
Seth.
Her voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. His eyes snapped open immediately, and the relief that flooded his expression was so profound it made her chest ache. He was beside her in an instant, taking her hands with a gentleness that belied his exhaustion. 3 days, he said, his voice rough. You've been unconscious for 3 days. The healers said your body was recovering from catastrophic overuse, that we just had to wait. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I've never been good at waiting. Amy tried to sit up, her body protesting every movement. What happened? After Thorne's estate. We won. Seth helped her lean against the pillows. Marcus and Thorne have been executed for treason and mass murder. We've arrested 8 other Shadow Council members from the information they gave before they died. The rebellion collapsed without its leadership. His amber eyes held hers. You stopped them, Amy. You saved 27 healers and prevented a civil war. The weight of it settled over her. Victory purchased with her own temporary death. The healers? Are they? All alive. Recovering here in the palace. Nora's been coordinating their care. Seth's hands tightened on hers. They've been asking about you constantly, waiting for you to wake up. Before Amy could respond, Seth pulled her into his arms, holding her with desperate care. I thought I lost you, he said against her hair, his voice breaking. When your heart stopped, I felt it through the bond. I felt you leaving, slipping away, and I couldn't. He stopped, composing himself. I've lost everyone I loved. I couldn't survive losing you too. Amy wrapped her arms around him, feeling the tremor in his powerful frame. But I didn't leave. The healers saved me. You saved them first. Seth pulled back to look at her. You saved all of us. He took a shaking breath, and Amy saw vulnerability in his expression that the Alpha King rarely showed anyone. Amy, I know you're afraid. I know you've lost everyone you loved. But I'm asking you to take a chance anyway. Stay with me. Be my mate, my queen. Help me build a kingdom where no healer ever has to suffer like you did, where gifts are honored instead of hunted. His voice dropped to a whisper. Choose me. Choose us. Choose the future we could build together. Before Amy could answer, a soft knock interrupted them. Seth looked ready to snarl at the intrusion, but Amy recognized Nora's voice through the door. Your Majesty, the healers are requesting an audience with Amy, if she's awake and willing. Seth looked at Amy, who nodded despite her exhaustion. He opened the door to reveal 15 healers, the 12 from Marcus's compound and the 3 who'd escaped earlier, all cleaned and dressed in fresh clothes, but still bearing the marks of their ordeal. Nora led them in, her weathered face gentle. We didn't want to disturb your recovery, but we needed you to know, her voice caught. You gave us back our lives. We were broken, hopeless, convinced we'd die in those chains. You showed us that healers can be warriors too, that our gifts make us powerful, not weak. Clara stepped forward. The young healer Amy had first met in Riverside Village. We want to pledge our loyalty to you. Not because you're going to be queen, but because you're one of us. You understand what it means to be hunted for your gift. She knelt, and the others followed suit. We're asking to serve as your personal healer's council, to help you build whatever comes next. Amy felt tears burning her eyes. She'd spent 3 weeks believing she was the last of her kind, alone and hunted. Now she had 15 healers kneeling before her, offering chosen family when blood family had been stolen. I'm not your queen yet, she said softly. And even if I become one, I don't want your service. I want your partnership, your friendship, your help building something better. Nora smiled through her own tears. Then you have it. All of it. After the healers left, Amy turned to Seth. I spent my whole life afraid of my gift, believing it made me weak and burdensome. You showed me it makes me strong. She took his hands, feeling the mate bond hum between them. Yes, I'll stay. I'll be your mate, your queen. But not because you're protecting me, because we're protecting each other. Partners in everything. Seth's relief was palpable. Partners, he agreed. In everything. The mating ceremony happened that evening, witnessed by Lydia and the 15 healers in the palace's ancient ritual chamber. The vows were older than the kingdom itself, spoken in the wolf tongue that resonated in Amy's bones despite never having learned it. When Seth marked her neck and she marked his, the mate bond exploded into full completion. The golden thread between them became unbreakable, their souls intertwining until Amy couldn't tell where she ended and Seth began. She felt his alpha strength flowing into her, grounding and protective. He felt her healing gift, warm and endless, soothing wounds he hadn't known he still carried. Two halves becoming one whole. The royal council convened the next day, and Amy stood beside Seth, wearing a crown that felt too heavy and too light simultaneously. The counselors regarded her with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism, this village healer who'd somehow become their queen. "Your Majesty," one elderly counselor began, his tone carefully neutral, "we mean no disrespect, but the queen consort traditionally comes from noble lineage. You have no political training, no experience with governance." "You're right," Amy interrupted, and the room went silent. "I was a village healer. I know herbs and sutures, not politics or strategy. But I also know what it means to lose everything. To be hunted for gifts I didn't choose. To watch good people die because power-hungry men decided their lives didn't matter." She met each counselor's eyes in turn. "I can't promise to be a traditional queen, but I can promise to protect those who can't protect themselves." She outlined her proposal for the Healers Guild, a protected sanctuary and training center where gifted healers could develop their abilities without fear. A place where the rescued healers could teach the next generation, where Amy's amplification gift could be studied safely, where no child would ever have to hide in a cellar while their family burned. The council debated for hours, but when Nora and the other rescued healers testified about what they'd endured and what Amy had sacrificed to save them, the vote became inevitable. The Healers Guild was approved unanimously. That night, Amy and Seth returned to their shared chambers, exhaustion and triumph mixing in equal measure. The mate bond complete, they came together with whispered promises and shared vulnerability, two people broken by trauma finding healing in each other. "I never thought I'd find someone who understood the weight of this crown," Seth murmured against her skin, his hands gentle and reverent. "I never thought I'd find someone who made me want to stop running," Amy replied, tracing the mark she'd left on his neck, proof of their bond, visible for the kingdom to see. They fell asleep intertwined, the golden mate bond glowing softly around them like a shield against the darkness that had tried to destroy them both. 3 months later, Amy stood on the palace balcony beside Seth, watching the first students arrive at the Healers Guild. The building rose from the palace grounds like a promise kept, stone and glass and hope built from the ashes of tragedy. "Do you ever regret it?" Seth asked, slipping his arm around her waist. "That night at the inn? Agreeing to share that room with a stranger?" Amy smiled, leaning into his warmth. "Not for a second. That storm brought me to you. One room, one bed, one choice that changed everything." "Changed everything," Seth agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. Below them, Nora welcomed the new students, young healers whose gifts had marked them as targets, now finding sanctuary and training instead of chains. Clara demonstrated amplification techniques to an eager audience. The other rescued healers moved among the students, living proof that survival was possible, that healing could become strength. And as the sun set over the kingdom, painting the sky in shades of gold that matched the mate bond glowing between them, Amy knew that from the ashes of loss, they had built something worth protecting. A love that would weather any storm. A partnership forged in fire and sacrifice. A kingdom where healers would never again be hunted, but honored. She had spent 3 weeks running from her gift, believing herself weak and burdensome. Now she wore a crown and commanded respect, not through birthright or political maneuvering, but through the simple act of choosing to stand when running would have been easier. Seth's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. Through the mate bond, she felt his contentment, his pride, his absolute certainty that they could face whatever came next together. One room, one bed, one storm that had brought two broken souls together and forged them into something stronger than either could have been alone. And that, Amy thought as Seth pulled her close for a kiss that tasted like hope and home and forever, was worth every sacrifice. The kingdom had its alpha king and his healer queen. The Healers Guild would ensure no gifted wolf suffered as they had. And two people who'd thought themselves beyond saving had found salvation in each other. The future stretched before them, uncertain but no longer terrifying. Because they would face it together, partners, mates, two halves of one unbreakable whole.